Up next on the Big Tech Show is a conversation with Vukosi Sambo, who is the head of data solutions at MedScheme. Our conversation is on the role of data in the health tech industry. Can you please give me an understanding of the healthcare landscape in South Africa?
Thanks, Benjamin. Thanks for having me on the show.
Sure.
I think the one biggest characteristic that I really want to start off with is that you've got obviously the portion that is being catered for by the private sector, and obviously the balance, which is the burden on the public to take care of the balance of the majority of people. The healthcare kind of like really caters for 14% of the population, which equates to almost 9 million lives. And the really big players there, it's us, MedScheme. I'm with MedScheme, and then Discovery and Momentum, Liberty, and few other players. And what you see is that obviously out of the 59 million population, that balance for the state is really just too much. And you see it having been inflated by COVID in the last 18 months or so, where really the capacity have just not been enough. And I think it has also brought to the forefront the discussion that has been happening for a very long time in South Africa around national health insurance, which is to really gear to enabling opening access to as many people as possible. Obviously, from an economic and social dynamics and infrastructure, the feasibility of that model has been what has been at the center of that question of whether it can be done or not. But what you are then dealing with is that from a consumer side of things, the dynamics speaks to affordability around that access, and we are seeing even healthcare inflation outpacing normal CPI every year, further widening that gap, and that wedge is just really continuing to a point where you just feel at some point in time it just won't be sustainable. So we do really need to find alternative or more innovative solution that hopefully things like technology will bring into the space to ensure that affordability and access to healthcare is greatly enhanced.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the dynamics of what we are dealing with. But also in terms of the bigger players, I mean the private healthcare really operates mainly in the form of medical aids, which are non-profit entities that are governed by the Council for Medical Schemes Act, and underneath those you're sitting with the administrators like ourselves that really administer these biggest medical aid entities to really provide risk and healthcare administration solution for them in the most optimal way to ensure that we obviously enrich benefits and ensure that we help them drive that affordability at competitive prices to really attract as many people into the space as possible.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to know, because when you look at funding for other industries, right, you look at fintech, you look at health tech has barely scratched 2%, especially from private, venture capital or private equity firms, right? It was only during COVID in Q2 of 2020 that, it passed 2% and hit like 20%. What do you think we can be doing to increase the amount of private funding for healthcare services in South Africa and maybe for the rest of Africa?
Yeah, thanks. And I think rightly put, fintech has enjoyed most of the investment and the funding in terms of the technology innovation that has been happening in South Africa, and I think the bigger African continent perspective. But we don't really hear people say a lot of good things about COVID, but allow me to say one of the greatest beneficiaries of COVID has been healthcare in one form or shape. Yeah. In a sense that I think even when you look at our numbers, the membership and how it has managed to hold up despite the economic challenges and the threat to livelihoods that COVID has brought, it has really signified how people have really treated healthcare as top of mind now more than ever. Yeah. It probably is one of the few products that people are trying to hold on to despite any challenge. So I think that on its own has really accelerated the awareness around the need for healthcare in a way that will have everyone hopefully beyond just COVID having a different conversation than they used to around healthcare and its provision. And I think with everyone trying to then solution around the earlier elements that I spoke about of affordability of access, we should see a continuing increased investment into Meditech than we have seen in the past, and it speaks to the numbers that you've just quoted to say in the last quarter or last 6 months we have seen a bit of acceleration. And one of the other contributing factors in my view that has led to this uneven spend or investment between fintech and Meditech for me has been that if you really look at the history that we come from even as a country, and I think continentally, and you even see these dynamics at a global level, is that there's a sense of entitlement when it comes to things like healthcare.
True.
More so than you find in the fintech kind of space, where people feel entitled that this is the burden that the state should be carrying in most instances. So people have not necessarily taken personal responsibility around healthcare, which is starting to shift a bit. And as a result, the appetite from a private sector and participation even in terms of customers and the public in general has been very minimal. And I think that has kind of like made people be a bit unsure about the return on investment in playing in that space.
Yeah.
And conversations around things like NHI in the South African case also may make certain people sit and say, why do we need to go so much into this space if obviously we are also trying to work at a solution where we'll ensure access to everyone at no or minimal cost.
Yeah.
So we hope that obviously that will be enhanced whether we implement NHI in one form or shape, and there is a role with or without NHI, and we believe that there will be for fintech, for Meditech and technology solutions in this space. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anything the government is doing particularly to attract more private investment to South Africa? Because, like you said, right, people have believed, healthcare to be a responsibility of the government, right? And how much can the government really cater for? So are there some policies, are there some incentives that the government is, putting forward to really attract more private investment in the healthcare space in South Africa?
I think partially, yes. Firstly, I believe more could be done.
Okay.
But one of the most notable changes that I suppose we're all forced into having to embrace when COVID first hit us last year was the embracing of things like your virtual consult as a start, to say, prior to COVID, we're struggling to gain traction, and there were even regulatory red tapes around doing virtual consult with your doctor. But obviously, since COVID came and we're all locked up in our houses, we obviously all needed to start embracing that, and all providers, including ourselves, had to quickly move to accelerate to build capacity to be able to facilitate that for our almost 4 million lives in our case. And what you have seen with things like your virtual doctor consult is that they come at a much cheaper cost compared to your normal face-to-face doctor physical visit. So already it starts helping alleviate one of the key challenges, which is the affordability that I spoke about. But it also opens opportunities in terms of access to say, now if I can have this virtual consult, it means I can access any doctor from any location from the comfort of my home. And that on its own is really, really a big factor for some of the people that were in the remote areas that would not have had access to certain kind of specialists that may be isolated in some of the urban areas.
So did government take a stand to say, healthcare providers can go ahead with virtual consultation?
I would say yes, for the most part. Whether voluntary, that's a question for another day. In a sense that obviously there was no other option. We were in a lockdown. I mean, we started at the highest level. We were quite firm, or the president was quite firm, and the rest of the cabinet around going into level 5. So all had to be at home. But I do believe that even post-COVID, it is it is something that we will not necessarily reverse, because we are seeing the benefits in terms of utilization, people embracing it. There are obviously challenges in terms of data access, and some of the doctors also embracing the technology itself. But I think everyone is moving along, and we are seeing really an ever increasing utilization and embracing of virtual consult and other technology-related solutions from a medical point of view. So we appreciate government support, and we believe that it will continue even beyond the COVID
season. Yeah, and that makes sense, because we've seen things like telemedicine as well, virtual consultation. I think let's narrow down to MedScheme, right? So what is MedScheme, and what does MedScheme offer citizens and clients?
I think, at the center of what we're trying to really do is to really transform the healthcare industry. And with that, we're really trying to increase that access to quality healthcare for all. And arguably, we are the most diversified organization from a health asset perspective, in a sense that if you really look at our structure as a bigger group, Afrocentric, it extends beyond just the medical aid administration and managed care part that MedScheme largely plays into even primary healthcare, which is the lower cost side of private healthcare access. We've got your pharmacy direct, the ensuring automation and delivery of pharmacy script for chronic and other related services. So we really reach over 3.9 million lives directly through our medical aid administration and managed care. And I think if you really look at the numbers that I quoted earlier in terms of the 9 million lives that are under private care, we can see we've got a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
And that responsibility implies that we need to be the leaders, or at the forefront of the change of driving Meditech from a private sector perspective, and also equally partnering with government to see how they could equally as well on their side leverage opportunities that Meditech brings, even if we were to consider it in the context of NHI and how it could impact the funding model and feasibility of the delivery of that model. So we really do believe that we are the leaders of that change, and we are on a journey. MedScheme in itself, it's over 50 years old, but the bigger Afrocentric group that now owns MedScheme from a subsidiary perspective is much younger than that. But so there's a combination of this newness versus the legacy, which is quite interesting. But this we are proud of our legacy and where we come from as an organization, but we equally embracing the recent development in digital and technology that the recent years have presented us in the industry, the country at large, and even just at a global scale. And we are definitely, without a doubt, committed to taking advantages of these technologies to lead and drive the change to deliver better and quality healthcare using these technologies. So
I have a two-in-one question, right? What are some of the emerging technologies that healthcare is taking advantage of, right? And do you see the role of data, in any of those applications?
Yes, I think I come from a data background myself, and I'm head of data solution for the entity. It is really to say that the way I always think about digital or Meditech and quite frankly in an industry is that digital is really more about being able to leverage the platforms that these technology tools have provided for us, that allows us to grab the different networks that are relevant for your industry. So in our side, it will be the hospital groups, the doctors networks, us as funders or insurers, the schemes themselves, with the member really primarily at the center of that entire ecosystem, and obviously the regulation to really connect those dots to speak to each other in such a way that allows you to deliver really the most optimal care at the lowest cost as much as possible to enhance access. So that's my interpretation of what digital means for our industry. But I think even from a generic digital interpretation. That's what digital is all about. It's platforms that recognizes networks, and the only way you can knit these networks together from these different platforms is through data. Data is the DNA, or is the lifeblood of all of this, and being able to deal with what that brings in terms of those different networks, from say cyber security, from the data protection, to also being able to now harness a much increased volume, velocity and variety of data that all these different networks will bring, which is the question of the big data and the big data analytics, the technology that helps you to really be able to analyze this data, to be able to present innovative products and solutions that create value for your customers, primarily in a way that will give you competitive advantage, and it becomes a win-win for your customers, yourself as an organization, and even the rest of your stakeholder ecosystem. So data really is the centerpiece that allows you to connect these dots, and also ability to process and deliver insights from that data is what the innovation and the products of the future will really come from. But you gotta do that responsibly. Obviously, there's a lot of regulation and challenges that have come and continue to come in terms of how we need to treat and manage this data.
That's interesting. So tech startups face a challenge of developer exodus, right? From the more medical and healthcare side, we see a lot of doctors running to Canada, right? Do you know of any initiatives being put in place to either attract and retain talent for the health tech and healthcare industry?
Yes and no. I think at a more country and industry level, in terms of when you talk about the data and technology communities, I think there's really a lot happening, especially in the South African context, and a lot of support and collaboration between a lot of data and tech leaders via summits, conferences, building a bit of capacity to embrace and nurture the young and upcoming people who've got interest in this space. But given the need, if you were to look at it from a demand and supply perspective, undeniably there's still a huge gap, and it will probably take some time to really close. Also primarily because we come from a history where data literacy itself was already a challenge. So now actually we are just adding another layer of complexity to even the basic data literacy capability. And also the culture itself around the whole dynamic. And it speaks to really just preparing the workforce of the future, and everyone really needs to gear themselves up. It doesn't matter what industry you are in. From a healthcare perspective, there's obviously gonna, in my view, we're gonna experience a shift from just simply seeing the clinical skills that are migrating and continue to be a challenge, and the shortage that we have spoken about for the longest time, to those skills that you're referring to, the IT and data skills, the developer skills, because part of embracing Meditech and also what it brings to the table in terms of leveraging these electronic health records, these networks, to enhance and support our doctors, and also in some instances even deliver better healthcare outcomes, either from a routing perspective or diagnosis itself, is that the data skills are going to become more central to the execution of healthcare and wellness for our people going forward. So we are going to continue to face a bit of an uphill battle on that. Organizationally, I think we are really doing a lot, because we have made these commitments to be a data-driven organization. We are embracing what this fourth industrial revolution, or this digital age, has brought, and we realize that it is here to stay, and we don't want just to be the spectators or just the laggards or the late adopters. We want to really be at the forefront of that, and not just through adoption, but through also initiating some of these changes, some of these innovation, and some of the best solutions to really drive healthcare delivery forward in our country and for our customers.
I don't envy you guys in the healthcare sector, because you're dealing with both clinical talent shortage and then limited access to tech talent.
Yeah, no, it does kind of like feels like it escalates the problem, but it also presents an opportunity. I think if you look at the way digital works. It is, and I mean, we've seen it even with the development of vaccines in general, to say we have moved from an era where it used to take years and decades to develop most of these, but because of medical technology development, you'll be surprised the level of acceleration and the new way of thinking around digital from a design thinking perspective, rapid experimentation, that is no longer as capital intensive as it used to be. So I think we are embracing a whole lot of that, but it definitely is a challenge, but it is one that we are definitely embracing and very excited about, and we believe that more than anything as it presents opportunities for us.
All right, thank you so much, Vukosi. Before I let you go, I'll play a short game, and you have to sing.
There are two things that I probably can't do, and sing and dance. My wife says I've got 2 left feet, but
oh my days,
sure.
Don't worry, you wouldn't dance, you will sing.
I'm not sure if I'm ready, but I don't think I've got much of a choice.
Okay. So guys, let's get the fun started. So my first word is love.
Wow, that's I can't get my tune right, so like rapping kind of thing qualifies as
if you want to rap.
Yeah, we love Africa and we think that your health is your wealth. So we believe that you need to get yourself a right cover so that you and your family are protected. And
see, you really coming up with tunes.
Yeah, man.
I would have sung someone else's song, right? Like Justin Bieber's love song. That's fine. Next song is Africa.
Yeah, Africa is our home, man, and Africa has never looked as bright in terms of opportunities, and we are so excited of the future and taking advantage of the meditech and fintech and all the technologies that are coming our way.
Nice. Yeah. My final word.
I thought we were done. I'm sweating here, like I'm had to dive deep.
Right. I think my final word would be life.
Wow. I think life is supposed to be embraced, live to the full, die empty, give it your all, and leave everything on the field, and we are here for that, and we really are going to be at the forefront of our generation in delivering really the best gift to the next generation as much as we can.
Yes!
Sam.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Benjamin. This was really lovely. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Vukosi Sambo, the head of data solution at MedScheme Holding, part of the Afrocentric Group. Welcome to the Big Tech Show, proudly brought to you by Accelerate TV and the African FinTech Foundry, AFF. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.
I cannot visit Joburg without visiting Vilakazi Street, where Mandela's house is actually located. I already gave you an amazing interview with Vukosi, and I'm sure you're wondering what's next. Keep watching the Big Tech Show to find out.